There was a widow in the village who went to wait for her husband with an umbrella every day, but her husband had already passed away. When there was a mudslide in the mountains, her husband was swallowed up by the mudslide while trying to save an elderly person who had difficulty walking. Since then, the woman has gone crazy day after day, year after year. At first, everyone treated her well, felt sorry for her for not eating or drinking, and always gave her food and soup to fill her stomach. She always smiled foolishly and said thank you. But there are everywhere a few old bachelors in the village, looking at the beautiful and curvy figure of the crazy widow, went to find her with food and asked her if she wanted to eat cakes. If she wanted to eat, she had to be hugged. The crazy widow is greedy and doesn't know anything, so she will let someone hug her. She will save half of her food and hide it carefully. When someone asks her why, she says she wants to save it for her husband, afraid that he will go hungry. Our village has always been conservative. After this matter spread, the women in the village were unwilling to help the crazy widow, thinking that he was shameless. Not only did he stop bringing food to the crazy widow himself, but he was also afraid that his own men would be seduced, so he did not allow men to go and deliver food, resulting in the crazy widow often going hungry. Those old bachelors are even more outrageous, from asking for a hug at first to asking for a kiss or touch. Whenever they want to do this, the crazy widow will smirk and push them away, saying no, he has a husband, because the crazy widow wouldn't let her kiss or touch him. The old bachelors were also afraid that he would make a big deal out of it, so they gradually ignored him. Even so, he became a that everyone in the village disliked. But I always feel that it's the villagers who are wrong. What did he do wrong? He just wants to fill his stomach and wait for his husband to come home. Whenever the village women talk behind his back, I wonder who still remembers that his husband is a hero. I feel sorry for him and always bring him food. I am a day student and my parents give me money for meals every day. I only eat a little worse myself and buy some steamed buns or rice noodles for the crazy widow to eat. Over time, perhaps because I was the only one who didn't ask for anything in return, the crazy widow became familiar with me and always played well with me. Sometimes when it rained, he would walk alone from the village to the high school in town to pick me up after school. Because he knew that we were day students in high school, he was afraid that I would get wet in the rain. But soon rumors spread that my friends were having an affair with the crazy widow, and the bad boy's mouth was always dirty. Every time the crazy widow comes to pick me up, they point at the pitiful crazy widow in the rain and laugh, saying that your wife has come to pick you up. I feel particularly uncomfortable about this and have asked the crazy widow not to come pick me up several times, but she never listened and has been doing it for 3 years. It also made me laugh at for 3 years in high school. Every time she picked me up from school, she would hand me the half-eaten food in her arms, which was clearly left for her husband, but became left for me. I honestly told her that I don't eat. Some friends know that he likes to leave things for his husband. When they see this scene, they will ridicule me for being the husband of the crazy widow. The crazy widow shamelessly held my hand and said that I was her little husband. I originally intended to do good deeds, but I was humiliated for 3 years, until the typhoon hit my senior year of high school, and the school announced the suspension of classes after half a day. Everyone ran out of the classroom in the wind and rain, and the crazy widow came to pick me up again. His umbrella was broken and got wet in the rain. He was afraid that I would get wet, so he came over and foolishly handed me the broken umbrella. His friends burst into laughter and said, "Crazy wife came to pick up my little husband." He also felt very happy. He still called me little husband with a silly smile. I was very angry because the girl I had a crush on that day also pushed down the crazy widow and told her to go far away. I said he was shameless and sorry for her husband. Her husband is a hero, but she is embarrassing him here. If she doesn't want to die, she should just die. What I said were all angry words, but my heart really hurts. That was the first time he stopped smiling at me. He fell to the ground, looking at me with fear on his face. Finally, he trembled and got up, but still stuffed the broken umbrella into my hand and ran away in fear. When he ran away, I explained everything to the girl I liked, but he didn't listen at all. He said he used to like me, but now he realizes that it's embarrassing for me to date a crazy person. I feel ashamed and angry, holding a broken umbrella and crying while walking in the rain, because I suffered a lot of humiliation. But when I arrived at the foot of the mountain intersection, I saw the crazy widow still waiting for me in the cold wind. He was trembling and foolishly came up to hug me when he saw that I was soaked. He asked me if I was cold. The rain was too heavy and his clothes were soaked through. He was really beautiful, much prettier than the girl I liked. I remembered that the girl I liked rejected me. My heart was full of anger and I hugged him directly. At first, the crazy widow thought I was cold and foolishly lifted my clothes to let me wear them. But when I kissed him, everything changed. The widow called out in my arms that he was her husband. I said fiercely, "Aren't I your husband? Don't you always call me little husband?" I couldn't control my anger and dragged him into the nearby small forest, crying like a child. My heart is still full of guilt and fear. After going back, I can't forgive my wrongdoing. I keep telling myself that if he comes to pick me up next time it rains, I will apologize to the crazy widow as soon as I meet him. I deliberately saved money to take him out for a good meal, but I didn't have time to apologize to him. On the second rainy day, the crazy widow had an accident in the mountains. The road was slippery in the rain, and he couldn't step steadily. I slid down the hill and was found dead. I don't know if he came to pick me up or if he was wandering in the mountains. I will never know if he forgave me. When I went back, I didn't see the crazy widow, and I was confused, thinking he had gone to find a place to hide from the typhoon. His body was brought back to the village, and I saw his body covered in bruises. Let me run home and cry. I hate myself so much, I don't even have a chance to apologize. The crazy widow's family is no longer there, and then them. Villagers finally remembered her husband's kindness. Each household contributed some money to bury the mad widow. But because the money was not enough, everyone bought a new coffin and planned to be buried directly with her husband. No one is willing to carry the coffin for the crazy widow. This kind of thing is usually done by the younger generation, so they can only give more money and let a few old bachelors in the village carry it. But I volunteered to carry the coffin. My mother knew my thoughts and was very angry. The whole family questioned me why I had to carry the coffin for the crazy widow. I cried and told them that this was what I should do. I told them everything about me and the crazy widow. After they heard it, my mother scolded me and raised a scoundrel. My father told me to atone for this. Let me hold the memorial photo. There is a custom in the village that people who hate death cannot hold a big funeral. We have to carry the coffin at 23 o'clock and 1 o'clock in the morning, which is the time of midnight. Bury the crazy widow again. In the village, it's called sending a ghost coffin. There is a skill in sending a ghost coffin. If you can't make a sound or cry, just bury the coffin quietly. The only thing that can make noise is the sorna, but it cannot be gongs and drums. In the middle of the night, every door and window in the village is locked, and I am holding the photo of the crazy widow. In front is a sorna player, holding paper money and scattering it. I follow behind and further back her to coffin bearers. The sorna player does not play music, but occasionally blows. In order to tell the passers-by in the alley ahead that the delivery of the ghost coffin has arrived, so that the living can avoid it in time, we left the village and crossed a small stream to reach her husband's grave. This stream is very small and shallow, and everyone is used to stepping on it. Only outsiders need to pay attention. The moonlight is very dark tonight, and the surroundings are pitch black. You can't see your hand, holding the memorial photo and walking according to past experience. But for some reason, I suddenly stepped on nothing. The moonlight tonight is pitch black, and I stumbled after stepping on nothing. I thought I could stand firm, but something seemed to pull my ankle hard, and I fell down immediately. The pain was unbearable, but I didn't dare to scream, since the ghost officer cannot make a sound, otherwise it will disturb the deceased. He had a bad life, at least after he died. I hope he can rest in peace. I fell facing the ground, burying my face in the stream, choked on several mouthfuls of water. But at this moment, my ankle was pulled hard, and I was sliding in the stream. The people next to me were frightened at first sight, quickly put down the coffin gently, and silently came over to pull me up. After finally pulling me up, I spat a few mouthfuls of water. The sorna player took out a flashlight and shone it on me. He lowered his voice and asked if I was okay. I said my ankle seemed to have been pulled by something, so he shone the flashlight on my ankle. But just like this, everyone panicked, and I was stunned too. There was a black paw print on my ankle, which looked like a human hand, but was very twisted, grabbing my entire ankle. The paw prints are very obvious. The sorna player is an elder of the same clan in the village. He was the one who discovered the body of the crazy widow. When he saw my palm prints, he immediately looked serious. Let me not go again, saying that the deceased is dissatisfied with me, and that if I continue, something bad will happen. My heart is broken. I am not afraid, but I never expected that he would not even give me the right to carry a memorial photo. He knew he hated me and couldn't forgive me. After the photo was taken away by the old man, I was driven back home. As a grown man, I couldn't help but cry. My family saw me coming back so soon. Everyone asked me what was going on, so I told them what happened. My parents were scared and quickly looked at my ankle, but they couldn't understand and only felt scared. My dad was worried about my safety. My dad rode a tricycle out at night and invited a master who specializes in funerals. After the master arrived, he asked if we were going to have a funeral, and my parents told him about it. After he heard it, he wanted to see my ankle. When he saw the mark, he said it was a ghost looking for a mark. He also said that I was targeted by a fierce ghost. The whole family was frightened and quickly asked the master for help, but he refused to help, saying that he usually took care of the funeral, and he didn't care about this kind of thing. The master told us that this was just the beginning. When the woman returned to her soul on the 7th day, it would be the time to take my life. Because he hates me and wishes he could kill me to accompany him on the road, the so-called master is really afraid of this matter. No matter how my father bids and asks him for help, he refuses to help. Finally, he left overnight and told us that if I didn't want to die, I should run as far away as possible. But I could escape on the first day of the Lunar New Year, but I couldn't escape on the 15th day. Sooner or later, I would be found. Moreover, it will also affect local relatives. My mother was very angry. When the master left, it was already dawn. He came to the grave of the mad widow in anger, crying and cursing. He said his son treated him well, but there was just a conflict. Don't push him to death. His parents bought a lot of things and put statues of bodhisattvas, Buddhas, Sanking, and various immortals at home. They also bought me a necklace and bracelet with a Buddha statue. We didn't plan to run away because they made it clear that running away would eventually lead to being found and even implicate our loved ones. We can't do that kind of thing. These days, I've been living in a daze with memories of the crazy widow being pushed to the ground and cursed in my mind. I will never forget his sadness and fear in my life. On the 7th day after the death of the mad widow, it was said that the first 7 days came back to life. Everyone thought that the mad widow usually had no home and ate from many families. It is very likely that they will go to anyone's house. So that night, everyone placed a bowl of white rice at the door but did not open the door. meaning that they would leave after eating and not enter. For some reason, the dog barked particularly frequently tonight. Dogs from this small mountain village actually don't like to bark at night, because the village is too far away and there are no outsiders coming. The village is small and familiar. Dogs don't like to bark, but on this night, the dogs in the village barked extremely vigorously, and occasionally dogs would sneak into the doghouse. Making a whimpering sound similar to begging for mercy, I stood in the room upstairs, looking down from the window, a pack of dogs running in the village as if something was chasing them from behind. They screamed extremely intensely, occasionally stopping to look back, as if someone was watching them from behind, and then continuing to escape after a while. In this situation, no one would dare to go out. But when I went out, even though my parents warned me not to open the door, I still opened the window and climbed out from the second floor. In the middle of the night, I groped in the dark and arrived at the grave of the mad widow and her husband. I brought the steamed beans and noodle soup that I usually gave her and carefully placed them in front of the grave. Looking at her grave, I cried and apologized, saying that I had caused you harm. If you want to take your life, I have no regrets, but I hope you won't harm my parents. I told him that every household only puts white rice, and I hope he can eat better. I sat in front of the grave and talked to him about the past, and the more I talked, the more I felt that I was not a good person. He is so good to me, although he is silly. He always comes to pick me up in the rain. Every time he goes home with me, he worries that I am cold and repeatedly helps me pinch my stomach. Even if I'm hungry, I have to save half of my food. I'm just an animal. I cried until almost dawn when my parents found me. When they saw me, my mother was so angry that she hit me. Then he hugged me and cried, questioning why I was so foolish. I comforted him by saying, "Don't worry, the first 7 nights have already passed, and I'm fine. It must be that I moved the crazy widow." After he forgave me, my parents saw that nothing had happened on the first 7 nights, so they took me home. But when I came back, the village seemed lively, and everyone gathered at the entrance. We curiously leaned over to take a look, but we were stunned. A person was hanged from a tree at the entrance of the village. The culprit was an elder who used to play sorna. He was hanged from the tree by his own belt. He was wearing shorts. His tongue was sticking out. His eyeballs were bulging, as if they were about to pour out. And there was a paw print on his arm that was exactly the same as mine. There is a camera at the entrance of the village, because there is only one entrance and exit in the village. In the past, people's dogs, motorcycles, and even tricycles were often stolen from their homes, so cameras are placed here. People called the police, and before the police arrived, the people went to turn on the camera, and everyone gathered around. I couldn't help but gather around to take a closer look, just like that. But it made my back cold. At 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, I could see the elder coming to the village entrance, but he didn't come by himself. He seemed to have been dragged out while sleeping. Several times he struggled to climb out, but was dragged back by invisible hands. His belt also floated in the air, as if someone who could be invisible was walking with the belt. The elder clearly barked a few times, but was covered up by the barking of the village dog. After resisting several times, he finally lost his strength and was hung on a tree. At first, he would flutter a few times, but soon there was no more movement, and the body was hanging straight there. Everyone was scared and said it was haunted. I never expected that before I had an accident, the elder would die. All of this made my parents very scared, because the deceased and I both had those paw prints on our bodies. The police quickly came to investigate and took surveillance videos, telling the villagers not to spread rumors everywhere. After the autopsy, they severely criticized the villagers, because they learned that the police had found the body outdoors, and the first reaction was to call the police. How could the villagers bury them directly on their own? They even dug up the grave and took away the body of Widow Fung, saying they would also do an autopsy on her. Our family foolishly returned to the house. As soon as I came back, my mom couldn't help but cry. I knew he was worried. I wanted to comfort him, but I couldn't say anything. My dad asked me to go back to my room and rest first. He also said that he would find a way to save my life no matter what. I went back to the room and didn't feel tired even though I hadn't slept all night. When I entered the room, I was still thinking about that crazy widow. I don't understand why she took away the life of that elder. At noon, a guest came to my house, the same master as before. She clearly said she wouldn't care, but she still came to my house. I don't know how much my parents paid to invite him over. They also slaughtered a chicken at home and stewed it for the master to eat. The master asked me to come to his side and sat down to ask him carefully. He carefully looked at the ghost paw prints on my ankle again, and then he said he also found it strange because the ghost's revenge is usually on the 7th day. And now it has passed the first period, but I am fine. In theory, I should have died with that elder. He told me that because I didn't have an accident tonight, he thought it might not be so strange and was willing to come and help. I asked him what to do now, and he said don't worry. Let me go back and have a good sleep and wait until the sun sets. The master also told me not to be too nervous. He said that since it was okay after the first period, there should be no problem. When I heard this, I felt a little relieved and felt sleepy. After dinner, I went back to bed and slept until the sun set. When I woke up, the sunlight was gone, and there was a blue, blurry, and unclear space between heaven and earth. Mosquitoes hovered over people's heads, and the master came to my room. Tell me, if the mad widow is a ghost, she must not have been reincarnated yet. If I am really in danger, something will happen tonight, and then he took out many white candles from his bag and asked my parents to move the bed out. The room suddenly became empty, and the master asked me to sit directly on the ground and put these white candles next to me. Around me, he picked out 3 more from the candle, poked my finger with a needle, and smeared the blood on the bottom of the candle. He asked me to leave the room and wait for a moment. A few minutes later, he let me in and asked me why people can't turn back when walking at night. I shook my head and said I didn't know. He told me that ghosts harm people. In fact, most of them are ghosts blowing out the light. Because people are 3 parts afraid of ghosts, and ghosts are 7 parts afraid of people. As long as a person has great righteousness, lonely souls and wild ghosts cannot approach, and those who control the human body's yang energy. It's 3 life lamps located on the top of the head and on both sides of the shoulders. You can't turn back when walking at night to avoid ghosts blowing out the lights. Some ghosts want to harm people. A cold wind will blow on the shoulder, but the cold wind cannot extinguish a person's majestic righteousness. However, if the person looks back in confusion, a gust of wind will be brought when they turn their head. With the help of the cold wind blown by the ghost, the life lamp can be blown out. Just like the elder and master who asserted that he was first, blown out by the ghost, so he was approached by the ghost. But I feel confused. The elder should have been dragged out while sleeping. After all, he was only wearing shorts when he died, and he couldn't turn back. How was he blown out of his life lamp? Moreover, there is one thing that I am very puzzled about. When I was sending the ghost official, I was clearly not blown out of my life lamp. Why was the ghost suddenly grabbing my ankle? Does it mean that this fierce ghost is harming people? Even if I don't blow out the life lamp, I raised these doubts with the master, and he said he didn't know. This incident went against his understanding, but he has already given me the best method. I asked what to do next, and the master pointed to the candles on the ground. He said he had hidden my 3 favorite lamps in these candles. If the ghost comes tonight, it is necessary to blow out the life lamp before harming me, and all I have to do is sit here with matches. No matter how many candles the ghost blows out, just quietly light them all. I asked him which 3 candles were my favorite lamps with so many candles here, but he shook his head and said he couldn't tell me because once I knew which ones were my favorite lamps, I can't help but look at it with my eyes, and then I will be seen by the ghost. He also told me not to panic. The ghostian energy is not so strong. It takes time to blow out the candle. There won't be a scene where all the candles are blown out. Let me not be nervous. After giving these orders, the master will leave and say he won't deal with this matter anymore. His meaning is that I only have one chance tonight, and I want to take advantage of the tired ghost to talk to him and resolve the grievances between me and the ghost. I am very grateful for his help. It's already good enough that he's willing to do this. I asked him if ghosts have anything to fear, and he handed me a knife, saying it was a knife left by a bandit. Killed many people with murderous intent. If you cut the knife into the ghost's forehead, you can cheat. But he said it very seriously. I only have one chance. Once it cuts into other parts of the ghost, the killing intent of this knife will be used up. Actually, I can't say for sure if I will use the knife to kill the crazy widow. I think I killed him myself, and I couldn't bear to use a knife to cut him. The master left, leaving me alone in the room. My parents listened to his advice. I packed my bags early and went to live in the town, because I was worried that ghosts wouldn't be able to hurt me, and would hurt my close relatives, which would cause more trouble. My mother's eyes were red from crying before she left. Let me take good care of myself. I stayed alone in the room, watching the candle burn quietly. When it got dark, the sound of dogs barking outside was even more intense than last time. The street outside is windy, blowing the lanterns in front of the rural gate. Some people in the village are worried about ghosts causing trouble, so they deliberately light up the red lanterns, hoping to celebrate the funeral. The wine was too strong, and the lanterns kept hitting the eaves, making a banging sound. The flickering light inside was finally extinguished, and the road in front of the door was dark. The dog downstairs suddenly made a whimpering sound and somehow rushed into the doghouse. With a creak, the door downstairs opened, and I quickly returned to the candle and sat down. I don't know why the door opened, but it shouldn't have been blown open by the wind. My parents had clearly closed the door before leaving, and the room was silent. I could even hear my own breathing and heartbeat. Suddenly, the sound of slowly going upstairs came from the stairs. The candles in the room began to flicker, and the flames flickered. My heart was in my throat, and I stared at the door of the room. The gloomy head slowly poked out from the door. The person's face was pale, with only pupils in their eyes, but no whites. It was pitch black, and they quietly poked their head out to look at me. And when I saw his face, my heart couldn't help but be hard. It wasn't a crazy widow, it was an elder of the same clan who had just died. He stood at the door and looked at me for a while, showing a strange smile. His shoulders slowly stretched out and walked towards me. When he came to me, he lay down and walked with twisted limbs, then stopped in front of these candles. I looked at the elders of the same clan tightly, not understanding why he came here instead of the crazy widow. The faces of the elders of the same clan often approached the candle, and then his cheeks and neck bulged like a toad, and for a moment the veins were exposed, as if they were about to explode. Suddenly, he blew out a breath of yincha, which actually extinguished a large area of candles. I tried to calm myself down, restrained my trembling hands, lit the matches, lit the candles again, and the elders of the same clan climbed up to me with their heads tilted, trying to touch me with their hands. My heart is beating fast, but I keep telling myself to stay calm. Just turn on the life lamp, and it will be there when the elders of the same clan are about to meet me. The hand was pricked like a thorn, and it was quickly destroyed. Thank goodness, the master said that the life lamp must be blown out at least twice before ghosts can harm people. It shows that he either didn't blow out two lamps just now, or he has already blown out to lamps, but I lit another one in time. Neither he nor I know where my favorite lamp is. The elder of the same clan suddenly began to laugh strangely. The laughter was extremely harsh, but he was clearly closed and did not open his mouth to laugh, and the sound seemed to come directly from his throat. Listening to it made my scalp tingle, and his cheeks bulged again. I was a little anxious for a moment because I hadn't had time to light all the candles yet. Then the elders of the same clan blew out another breath of yincha. This time, only 1/5 of the candles were left. I was anxious and quickly lit the candles with matches. The elders of the same clan reached out to me again, but his fingers were pricked back. Thank goodness, it seems that at least the life lamps are in this 1/5. But I know that if this continues, I will be in danger. I didn't have time to light so many candles, and he would blow out the third breath of yincha. At that time, I would undoubtedly die. I came up with a clever idea and only lit part of the candles. Then I started swapping the positions of these candles, some in front of me, some behind me, so that I could block the cold wind with my body. This action also angered the elders of the same clan. His gaze towards me became more and more fierce, but I didn't want to be afraid of him. The master said that the more afraid he is of ghosts, the more fierce he becomes. I didn't expect my elders of the same clan to come and harm me. The fearful fish itself was a bit angry. After changing the candles, I continued to light those candles, and he puffed up his cheeks again. I was so anxious that I didn't care about anything else. I directly yelled at him, "You're my uncle. No one else has come to harm me, but you have come to harm me. If I die, I will also become a ghost. Kill your whole family." What surprised me was that the elders of the same clan were scared by my roar. He was actually discouraged when he got angry. My mind is always blank, and I remember not being afraid of ghosts. I picked up a knife and shouted angrily, chasing after my elders of the same clan. Unexpectedly, he was scared and climbed towards the stairs. I grabbed the knife and roared angrily again. He was obviously scared, but his face still had that strange smile. I had already thought it through. If he dared to come and blow his life lamp later, I directly slashed the knife towards his forehead. Whoever wants me dead, I will scatter his soul. I went back to sit and lit the candles again. Whenever the elder of the same clan wants to approach, I pick up a knife and scare him fiercely, but he dare not approach again. In the end, he seems to feel helpless. Finally, I completely retreated. I breathed a sigh of relief and made sure every candle was lit. I looked at the time and it was already 11:30 in the middle of the night. As the master said, as long as it's past midnight, there won't be any more problems, because this is the time when the yin energy is heaviest and only ghosts can harm people, and they have to endure for an hour and a half. I thought the elders of the same clan were going to give up, but soon after, there was another sound of thump from the stairs. I swallowed my saliva and tightly held the knife in my hand. I want to fight with him. I stared at the door of the room, but this time it was not the elders of the same clan who came, but his son. His son was carrying a bucket of water and looked at me in horror. I asked him what he was doing with vigilance. He trembled and said his father had a dream. After saying sorry, he suddenly poured the bucket of water towards me, and most of the candles beside me were immediately extinguished. He trembled and said sorry again. I ran away quickly. I was so anxious that I wanted to light the candles, but they were all wet and difficult to light. Suddenly, the window was pushed open. The head of the elder of the same clan was sticking out and looking at me. He climbed in through the window like a gecko, and his throat let out a strange laugh. I walked to the only remaining candle, puffed up my cheeks, and couldn't care less. I quickly grabbed the knife and spread my legs. Running downstairs, I didn't have time to save those soap candles. I fled downstairs in embarrassment and hurried towards the door. A gust of cold wind blew, and the door was unexpectedly closed. The room was pitch black and silent. I was panting and couldn't see the surroundings clearly. I tried to turn on the light, but it became extremely dim, even flickering, and looked like the power might go out at any time. I held the knife in both hands, looking around nervously. Suddenly there was thunder, and the lightning illuminated the whole room. I saw an elder of the same clan climb down the stairs and pounce on me, following the law of thunder, together with the elder of the same clan. I almost scared my knife off, and I dared not chop randomly, because I was afraid I wouldn't hit the spot. I hated his son so much that the elders of the same clan rushed over and grabbed my neck. His strength was so great, I couldn't resist at all. I felt like my whole body was being dragged. My vision began to darken rapidly. I couldn't breathe, and stars appeared in my eyes. Just at this moment, the door was suddenly knocked open, and a shadow hit the elder of the same clan with force, causing me to fall to the ground. I instinctively grabbed the knife, wanting to see who saved me. But when I looked, I was stunned to find out that it was the crazy widow who saved me. He was still bruised all over, his clothes were soaked by the rain, and the crazy widow, like her elders of the same clan, had a pale face and only a pitch black pupil in her eyes. Two fierce ghosts appeared in my house, looking at each other warily, and making strange noises in their throats, as if two wild beasts were confronting each other. The elder of the same clan suddenly moved, but he did not pounce on the mad widow, but directly pounced on me. The mad widow saw this and quickly blocked in front of me, but it was this moment that he was grabbed by his elders, who immediately opened their mouths and bit his neck. The mad widow screamed in pain, and I became anxious. I am not blind, and I can see that he was caught by the elders of the same clan because of me. In desperation, I rushed forward and aimed a knife at the elder's forehead. But the elder knew what I wanted to do and grabbed Mrs. Fang's shoulder. The body turned and refused to let me aim. At this moment, Feng Widow pushed him away with force, but a piece of flesh on his neck was bitten off. I watched his injuries heal quickly, as if he had never been hurt, but his body began to become more transparent. He held my hand and quickly took me outside. His hand was extremely cold, without any warmth. We rushed into the rainy night. I followed him and didn't know where he was taking me. When I turned around, I saw an elder of the same clan behind us, chasing after me to wipe the rain off my face. Looking at the mad widow's face, I saw him again. He didn't harm me, but instead came to save me until we ran to the creek. I just found out where the crazy widow wants to take me. He wants to take me to the grave. The thunder keeps coming, and the pouring rain makes the night even more eerie. I fled to the grave of the mad widow in embarrassment, only to find that there was an extra person. I never knew that person, but he looked extremely familiar. He is the husband of the crazy widow. I saw his photo on the tombstone. The husband stood still, looking coldly at the elders of the same clan who were chasing us. Now the elders of the same clan dared not move. He was chasing us so hard just now, but now he dared not approach at all. I trembled and wiped the rainwater off my face. Suddenly, the crazy widow hugged me and gently told me not to be afraid. His embrace was so cold, but for some reason, it made me feel particularly secure. I stretched out my hand blankly, wiping the rainwater off his face. He seemed not crazy, calmly looking at me, and the elders of the same clan still dared not come over. He angrily turned around in place a few times and finally left. At this moment, the crazy widow finally smiled at me, as if every silly smile in the past 3 years. Although he had pitch black eyes and no warmth on his body, he completely warmed my heart. He reached out and touched my head. He gently said to me, "Little husband, are you scared?" At this moment, I couldn't help but burst into tears and threw myself into his arms, crying so loudly, constantly saying sorry. I regret it. The rain mixed with my tears and fell, and there was some sadness on her face, but still squeezed out a smile. stuck out her tongue, and told me not to cry in front of her. Ghosts cannot rely on anyone, otherwise they cannot be reincarnated. I could only wipe away my tears and restrain myself from crying. The crazy widow's husband looked at me and then went back to his own grave. He has been comforting me, telling me not to be afraid. He also said that if I come to him in the next few days, everything will be fine. He said he can already be reincarnated. But for the sake of my little husband, I have to stay in this world for a few more days. As the crazy widow said, for a whole night, the elders of the same clan did not come to find me again. We sat and talked like this. I was clearly chatting with a ghost, but I wasn't afraid at all. We talked until midnight, and the time was up. He patted my head and asked me to come back tomorrow. Then he went into his own grave, and I dared not wander around, so I stayed next to his grave. This is clearly a tomb, but it is the most reassuring place for me. I waited until dawn, and the master and my parents also came back. I told them about this matter, and they were all very surprised after hearing it. My father couldn't help but hit the son of the same ancestor. The master told him not to go, saying that he already had a guess in his heart, but it was difficult to say it out loud. The master also told us, since the ghosts of this crazy widow and her husband will protect me, he will come here for the rest of the time, and he will sternly tell me, never ask how the mad widow died. Don't let the ghosts remember that they are already dead. Otherwise, it will make the ghosts nostalgic for the world and affect reincarnation. I listened to the master and came to the mad widow's grave at midnight. My parents were afraid that I would suffer here, so they specially bought a small tent. When I came to set up the tent, the mad widow emerged from the grave, and when he saw me, he hugged me gently. She gently stroked my head and still called me little husband. I felt embarrassed and a little scared because I saw the ghost of her husband, and we were right under her husband's nose. The crazy widow saw my fear and told me not to worry. She said that because humans and ghosts have different paths, there are boundaries between humans and ghosts, and her husband will not be jealous. Then he pulled me into the small tent, holding me like a big sister, letting me sleep peacefully here. I still feel very sad when I think of his passing. I asked him if he hated me. He shook his head and gently told me that 3 years ago he had the best husband in the world, and in these 3 years, he had me as his little husband. If it weren't for me, he would have starved to death outside long ago. He said he didn't hate me at all. On the contrary, he is very grateful to me for making him feel the only warmth during those 3 years when he was drowsy. I always chat with him. At this point, we talked about many things as if there were endless topics to talk about. A few days later, the autopsy results came out. This is not an ordinary fatal fall incident. The body fluids of the elders of the same clan were detected in the body of the mad widow, and there were human tissues of the elders of the same clan in his nails. Moreover, he did not die from a fall, but was strangled to death. When I learned the truth, my mentality was about to collapse. On that rainy day, he was hurt by me, but he still wanted to come and pick me up. That day in the small forest, I saw him crying and didn't know what to do. Finally, he left him in a panic and ran back home. Unexpectedly, he met an elder of the same clan and was dragged into the mountains again. The truth of the matter stabbed me in the heart like a knife, and I can imagine how helpless he was at the time, how desperate, how hopeful someone would come out to save him. But it was too late. His body was not discovered by the elders of the same clan first. The elders of the same clan came to play the Sorna in person, just to ensure that their crimes were forever hidden. I couldn't help but cry. My parents told me not to blame myself. They said it was the elders of the same clan who made the mistake, and asked me not to take responsibility for others' mistakes. My father also told me, is it really meaningful to let that woman go crazy and search for her husband? At least now the couple is reunited in the same room. but I still feel very guilty in my heart. After the master learned about this, he told me that everything made sense. When I was sent to the ghost official, I was caught by the ghost. That was the crazy widow, but he didn't want to harm me, but because he had resentment in his heart. I want to retaliate with my husband, afraid of implicating me, so I won't go. Why are the elders of the same clan sleeping? You don't need to extinguish your life lamp to be killed, because a person needs to have righteousness to make ghosts afraid. But without righteousness, he is a wicked and evil person. I asked the master why the elders of the same clan came to trouble me, and he said it was because the elders of the same clan were not good people. If a person does something bad, after death, one cannot be reincarnated unless they find a scapegoat for themselves. But it is best to find a scapegoat from relatives. I am of the same clan and origin as that elder, and I have also been captured by ghosts. I have a strong yin energy, which is his best choice. Unfortunately, the elders of the same clan could not have imagined that the Eastern widow couple, who had avenged their great grudge and could be reincarnated, would rather stay in the human world for a few more days. Just to protect my safety, the master also told me that the son of the elder would pay the price sooner or later. Because this elder is already a fierce ghost, he is forced to be reincarnated, and will soon lose his rationality waiting for the day of his 7th day. His son happened to be his closest person, and that was the time to prove all of this, as expected on the 7th day of the elders. His son died, and he was hung at the village entrance, dying in the same way as his father. But he couldn't become a ghost to continue harming people. Because he is a scapegoat, he has to bear this sin for his father, while his father can be reincarnated. That day I came to the grave, and the crazy widow saw me, but she didn't come over to hug me warmly anymore. She just sat with her husband, smiling and waving at me. I saw this scene and didn't disturb them. The two of them stood still and waved at them. Their bodies began to gradually become transparent, and he fell into his husband's arms. The two of them whispered these words, and I couldn't hear what they were saying at all. But I can also guess that after 3 years of waiting and searching, his man passed away, but he never forgot. In the past 3 years, they must have had a lot to say, so I won't disturb them. Their bodies have gradually become transparent. The transparent ones were almost invisible, and finally their bodies turned into starlight, slowly dissipating between heaven and earth. Bringing a glimmer of light to the darkness, they embraced each other. And the crazy widow mischievously smiled at me and waved at me. Signaling for me to go over, I slowly walked towards them. When I arrived at their tombstones, the couple had completely disappeared. As if I had never lived in this world, I wondered why the mad widow waved at me. When I looked down, I saw a broken umbrella lying on the ground. The sky started to drizzle slightly. I picked up the umbrella and opened it. The broken umbrella couldn't block all the rain, but it seemed like her embrace. It fills me with a sense of security. I think of him holding an umbrella every day for the past 3 years, to deliver an umbrella to his deceased husband. I remember that in the past 3 years, every time it rained, he had to bring this umbrella and walk from the mountain village to the town to pick me up. I couldn't help but smile bitterly at the tombstone. All day long, the little husband calls out, but in the end, he is still someone else's wife. I turned around and left with an umbrella, and there will never be a woman who needs me to feed again. But this seems better. At least she is no longer suffering, no longer lonely, no longer concerned. And she is finally reunited with her loved one.